NSFW. Serious. Police officers and nurses. What's the most fucked up thing you have seen on the job? **** tag notice **** jokes, puns, and off-topic comments are not permitted in * any * comment. Parent or child. * parent comments that aren't from the target group will be removed, along with their child replies. * report comments that violate these rules. Posts that have few relevant answers within the first hour, and posts that are not appropriate for the tag will be removed. Consider doing an ARMA request instead. Thanks for your cooperation and enjoy the discussion. ***, I am a bot, and this action was performed automatically. Please, if you have any questions or concerns. I guess mine was on New Year's Eve 1 year. I responded to a code white in the psychiatric department. Our hospital is small, so when these incidents happen, each floor is required to send one staff member to the event. Once I got to the entrance of the psych department, the security guard who I met in the hall looked up from his walkie-talkie and said, "Not this way. Fuck," and then took us through the garden entrance from the outside of a very snowy hospital. All I heard from the main psych entrance was screaming and banging on the door. Once we got inside, we found a patient had punched through all the glass windows in the nursing station, completely degloving his forearms of skin, and was throwing glass shards at the nurses in the station. It was extremely bloody. The whole hall was covered. He was smearing it on his face, clawing at his eyes. We nurses don't really have the tools to deal with patients once weapons are on board, so we called the cops and barricaded ourselves in the medication room. It was a tense couple minutes in there before cops showed up and pepper sprayed him, monsieur. Then I had the honor of being the dude who got to put compression on his arms and haul him onto the stretcher, huffing pepper spray fumes and getting absolutely howled at. And GT, degloving his forearms, and GT, pepper sprayed him. Ouch. Got a call of medical aid request, male subject and chainsaw-related injury. Showed up and found a male in the middle of the street, head in one place, body in another. Chainsaw still running. Guy had found out his wife was cheating on him with his own brother. Got drunk, put the chainsaw up to his throat to show them a lesson. The chainsaw teeth caught his neck and just kept going. Wonder what medical aid they thought you were going to be able to deliver at that point. That's what but sometimes calls for service is like playing the game telephone as a kid. What you start with couldn't be further from what you end up with. We have a frequent flyer who repeatedly comes in because she gets glass dildos stuck up her ass. She's already had to have emergency surgery twice because they break after she puts them in. She puts them in the freezer first. Somebody get this woman a metal dildo and an ice bucket, a vibranium dildo and 6 glass marbles of different color. Young girl in her 20s kidnapped and held captive for days. Every inch of her was bruised. They shaved her head and eyebrows off, burnt her. Just some seriously fucked up stuff. Only found by chance. I don't want to imagine what would have happened if she wasn't. No family came to see her either. She was truly isolated and alone with no support. I think that just made it so much worse. And GT. No family came to see her either. She was truly isolated and alone with no support. I think that just made it so much worse. That's unfortunately probably what made her a target for the kidnappers. The whole children being snatched off the street thing is extremely rare despite people's terror over it. Unless you're homeless, orphaned, otherwise at risk. Those kids are very real targets as they generally won't be missed. Was in the, a young girl was brought in, beaten and messed up. She was alert and oriented though, and was fighting with paramedics and ER staff about assessing her. Turns out she was only 12 or 13 years old. Beaten by an uncle, and refused to say anything until her daddy showed up. Of course no one showed up, at least when I last checked at the end of my 12-hour shift. Things that happens to children are the most fucked up. Do you think his was human trafficking? Like it to me. I work in an operating room this year. Patient came in for surgery. Was using a loaded gun as a sex toy up her rectum, and it went off as she was doing the deed. Shot through her abdomen. Yeah, I see some weird shit come through. Why in the ever-loving fuck? It's like, can't you just pretend it's loaded? Used to work at a naval hospital. Apparently artillery marines used to have this hazing tradition called kissing the breech. Essentially, the M777 howitzer artillery guns have a massive recoil, and the new marines would put their faces close to the recoil as possible. Apparently, this was fairly common, but honestly I never heard of it again after this. So this good-looking, 19-year-old boot actually kissed the breech. The gun recoiled and smacked him in the face. He transferred to our hospital one day after the incident, and it was the worst injury I have ever seen to this day. He somehow survived being hit in the face by the recoil of a round capable of traveling 25 miles. This thing weighs like 9,000 pounds and hit him in the face with literal cannon force. He makes it to hospital and I couldn't believe my eyes. He essentially had lost his entire face. No eyes, mouth, nose, chin. Nothing. A gaping hole with tubes and surgical dressings. I was part of a team responsible for stabilizing him and never heard the outcome. But I know he survived for quite some time. He may have made it back home. I hope he is still around. He had a great family around him, and the hardest part was seeing his mother holding pictures of her son before the incident happened. Heartbreak. Mate, if I lose my face I definitely want to be put to sleep. I've seen a clip about a guy in a car crash. It was on Reddit, but marked NSFW. I thought, meh, can't be that Balfart in the fuck. An amp. #X200B. The poor fuck had no jaw anymore. Everything below his eyes was just lumps of meat and blood. Straight out of a fucking horror movie. If that happened to me, fucking put me in a coma. If it can't be fixed, then send me off. An amp. #X200B. Edit. Sorry to disappoint y'all, but I can't seem to find it anymore. It might have gotten deleted. It was on ours. What could go wrong, or our idiots inches, but I can't be certain of that. This is my dad's story, when he was working with mentally and physically impaired clients. One night, he heard a scream and found one of the doctors running away, clutching his arms and his dripping blood everywhere. Doctor was being chased by one of the female clients who was about 15. Dad calmed the girl down and other nurses and doctors tended to the wounded man. His hands were fucked, nerves and muscles were cut bad. Dad later learned the girl was sexually molested by the doctor and became enraged when she learned what he was doing. The girl was mentally impaired, but she wasn't stupid. Doctor lost his license, and even though he wasn't imprisoned, he was pretty an outcast in town. And one night, he heard a scream and found one of the doctors running away, clutching his arms and his dripping blood everywhere. Doctor was being chased by one of the female clients who was about 15. Oh no, I hope she didn't have a psychotic break. And Dad later learned the girl was sexually molested by the doctor and became enraged when she learned what he was doing. The girl was mentally impaired, but she wasn't stupid. Actually, never mind. I once had a patient who was suffering from an addiction to alcohol and cocaine. He had snorted so much cocaine that his entire nose was gone. Basically, the amount of nose you see on a skull was the same amount what he had left. Also, because he smoked 2 packs a day for over 30 years, his pharynx wasn't functioning properly, therefore he had to be tube-fed. Now usually when patients are tube-fed, this is done with a probe off the nose and into his stomach. Now the probe was just loosely hanging out of his nose socket. If you would pull it a bit, you could see stuff moving in the back of his head. Because of the substance abuse, this patient had significant liver failure and could not qualify for a liver transplant. Now there is a certain enzyme your liver produces which is responsible for keeping the pressure and the amount of fluids in your cells at a normal amount. Due to his liver damage, this enzyme could not be produced anymore. Or at least his liver produces way too less of it. So, over the course of a couple of days he began to swell up. His legs, his belly, his arms. Basically everything was full of fluid. During his stay in the hospital he gained almost 40 pounds of excess fluids which just accumulated in his body. Because of this his skin was stretching a lot, which caused excruciating pains for the man. Even the strongest morphine could hardly ease the pain. Fortunately for him he died after a couple of days. That was no way to live. My father-in-law died of liver failure. Battling fluid build-up in the months before he died was a nightmare. Homeless person with an infected foot just came in last month. Foot was red and necros, little black holes everywhere. Poured some iodine and a few maggots came out. Another nurse suggested hydrogen peroxide. That hole bubbled and 1,000s of maggots came bursting out.